Welcome to Beyond the Weeds, the podcast where perseverance meets potential. I'm Josh Realm, public speaker, marathon runner, asthma advocate, and your host as we explore the intersection of health, fitness, and resilience. Whether you're managing asthma, chasing a new personal best, or simply looking for inspiration, Beyond the Weeds is here to show you that no challenge is too great to overcome. Together, we'll uncover stories, insights, and strategies to help you push beyond your limits. It's time to breathe deeply, move forward, and unlock your true potential, one step at a time. Today, I have the absolute honor of sitting down with a true legend in the world of swimming. My guest is an Olympic gold medalist, a world champion, a Commonwealth Games champion, an NCAA champion. Really, the list goes on. She's broken records, stood atop podiums around the world, and inspired an entire generation of athletes. But what makes her story even more remarkable? Well, she did it all while managing asthma. Maggie McNeil was diagnosed at 17, at a time when most athletes are hitting their peak training years. But instead of letting it hold her back, she pushed forward, adapting, overcoming, and proving that asthma is not a limitation, it's just another challenge to rise above. Today, Maggie isn't just an icon in the pool. She's also an advocate for lung health, working to raise awareness and empower others facing similar struggles. And now, as she steps into the next chapter of her life, we get to sit down and reflect on the highs, the challenges, and what's next for this incredible athlete. So let's dive in. Maggie, welcome to Beyond the Weeds.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're truly an inspiration, and I know that our listeners are going to gather a lot of valuable insights from our conversation. So again, thank you, and we'll hop right into it because I know you're a busy person. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Sounds good.
So let's start by covering a little bit about your career. So Maggie, your career is nothing short of legendary. 3 Olympic medals, world records, NCAA titles. You've accomplished more than most athletes ever dream of. When you look back at your journey, what are you most proud of?
Oh, there's so many things. And with swimming and with many sports, it's very much you do one event and then you have to switch gears and focus on the next thing and the next thing. So there isn't a lot of, I did that. Or I get to have time to kind of reflect and see everything that I've accomplished. So that's what I've been trying to do a little bit more since my retirement, now that I'm not competing. And I think every so often when I sit with it a little bit more, I'm like, wow, that was something that I did. And it still is surreal. And even when I won in Tokyo, I don't think that's completely set in yet. But just those memories and those moments. And I think it's really unfortunate in sport that that's the way it is. And I encourage athletes and even people that aren't athletes in their line of work, if they do something incredible or there's something to celebrate, it's really important to take the time to reflect and to celebrate that moment.
That's a really good thing to share because I don't have nearly as many accomplishments as you do, but I can tell you I do have, those little minute accomplishments that to me are huge. And I feel I do the exact same thing, or I do that thing that you're saying you shouldn't do. And that's just kind of sit in them, but not really reflect on them and take the time to really appreciate what I've accomplished. So that's really good advice.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's taken me a while to learn that. And I'm glad I'm learning it now at this stage in my life. But I wasn't aware that, for example, my last podium appearance was at Pan Am Games in 2023. And I didn't realize that it would be. So I definitely wish I kind of sat with it and those accomplishments more. And I really encourage other people to.
You've been named the best female athlete of the Tokyo Olympics and have set multiple world records. What did it feel like standing on top of the Olympic podium, realizing you had made history?
Weird. I think with the whole COVID time and the COVID Olympics, it was an interesting experience. And honestly, it feels pretty similar to a world championships or any kind of world-class meet in swimming. And I think the only difference is that the word Olympic is tacked on to the front of it. And that I think more people tune in to watch. My family and friends couldn't be there. So it really was a unique experience. But as for the competition, everyone is the same kind of throughout my career, which is nice. And as you swim longer and you know more people, it's definitely more comforting to see familiar faces when you're about to compete at the Olympic Games. But that, I think, is just something I wish that I could have shared with my family. And that's just the time that we were in. But I was lucky that one of my cousins actually set up a video camera on like the balcony of the cottage where my whole family was watching it. So I have a video of it, which is the next best thing.
Speaking of other competitors, and during COVID as well, extremely challenging. I mean, let alone the pressure on the fact that the Olympics happen, every 4 years? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
four,
challenging.
but then I had three in between and then five. So it was an odd time to be at my peak for swimming. But I think it makes my short career and obviously the
Yeah.
years and the ages for swimming has actually gone up a lot. There are a lot more athletes competing into their early mid 30s. But I knew that wasn't something that I ever really wanted to do because I do have other aspirations outside of the pool. So I think knowing that I went through kind of that turbulent time as an elite athlete in such a short period, I think that makes my career a little bit even more kind of unforgettable.
You've competed on the world stage against the best swimmers out there. Was there a particular race or moment that you felt was defining? It was a defining highlight of your career.
I think there are so many and so many different reasons. And when you're swimming, there are so many things that could go wrong. And I had a bunch of races that I'm lucky enough to say everything went right and everything went the way that it should be. But that's really not how it is for a lot of people. So I think there's a number of different things. So for example, I guess my 100 fly win in Tokyo, we were doing finals in the morning. So normally how a swim meet works is that you do the preliminary rounds in the morning. And then if you swim a 200 meter or less event, so the 50, the 100, or the 200 of any stroke, IM, freestyle, backstroke, butterfly, and you do the semifinal that night. And then it's not till the following evening that you would do the final. But in Tokyo, because of the difference in time and for the American coverage in North America, they actually put finals in the morning and semifinals in the morning and prelims were at night. So that was an unusual challenge for us to have to deal with. And it's not a very common occurrence. I think the last time a big meet did that was Beijing in 2008. So it's very rare. And for us, it was about trying to find out how you could be the best athlete you could be in the morning. You're waking up after sleeping 8-10 hours. You haven't moved. You're very lethargic. So how can you get up and get going to the best of your ability? And then obviously the COVID restrictions on top of that, daily COVID testing, not being able to kind of have a lot of interaction with other athletes, with your family. So a lot of interesting things that happened there that went the way that they were supposed to. And I'm glad that I could get my hand on the wall.
So, and that's one thing. So, and we're gonna get into your asthma a bit more here in a little bit. But during COVID, I remember with myself, when we didn't really understand what COVID was, at least at that point, I was restricted in everything that I could do because we didn't know how it would affect me, how it would affect my lungs, if it could be more detrimental to me having COVID as it would be to the normal person without respiratory issues. Was that ever a fear of yours?
100%. And I have asthma. My mom has asthma. She's also a family physician, so a frontline worker. And so knowing that she would be out all day at the hospital, at the office, and come home and bring back whatever it was she might have picked up, for months we would wash our groceries in the garage. Whoever got home from being out would strip in the garage, run upstairs, have the hot shower so you could physically clean yourself off of any potential infectants. And then we'd go about our business that way. So kind of knowing that she was going to be exposed to those things definitely was a worry for all of us. Additionally, I was at school at Michigan at the time, and it was the most locked down state in the country. And it didn't help that Canada was also the most locked down country. So I had a bunch of times I was supposed to go back to train at Michigan and go back to school, but people had been getting different variants. They'd have it within the athletic department, within the swim team. So my mom was like, you're not going back. You're not putting your health at risk just so you can train for the Olympics, which was hard to hear and to understand at that point because everything had been delayed. Everything had been canceled. And I was like, well, I still want to go to the Olympics and it's a year away and I need to do everything that I can do to get to that point. So I think that was the most challenging thing, knowing that because of the underlying health conditions and my asthma, that doing what's best for my swimming might not be best for my long-term health, like you mentioned.
You've won world championships, NCAA championships, practically every major title there is. Is there one gold medal that means the most to you and why?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think they each carry a story. Like I said, there's obviously things that happen in behind the scenes. I think World's Long Course in 2019 is special because it was my first senior team ever. And to make that step and going into the Olympics, I was like, hey, now my dream of going to the Olympics can be a reality. My junior Pan Pacs gold medal in the 100 fly. That one was my first medal internationally, junior or senior. And that was when I kind of was like, okay, maybe this can be a possibility. Obviously, winning at the Olympics is not something a lot of people can say they've done. So I think that one really speaks for itself. Commonwealth Games, 100 fly in 2022, I was going through a really hard time with motivation, and my coach had actually just left me the year before, and I didn't want to follow him because my credits for school wouldn't have transferred. So I was like, I'll finish out my year at Michigan and then potentially go somewhere else. I ended up following him to Louisiana. But there's about a 2-week period between Worlds and Commonwealth Games that summer, and I had decided to follow him to Louisiana. And I trained with him for 2 weeks and started to feel more like my old self, got my confidence back a little bit, and won that medal by 0.02. And I think that showed that partnership was what I needed to succeed and needed to get back on track where I was. And then lastly, my Pan Am Games golds. I think that's incredible because it's the most golds for, I think, a Canadian ever at a single Pan Am Games. So that is a pretty incredible feat. But that's also the first time that I swam freestyle internationally. So there's a different story and reasons behind why I think they're all really special.
0.02 seconds. That's crazy. I watched that. And is that something that's typical in professional swimming to really separate first place and second place by only 0.02 seconds?
Yeah, swimming is one of those really unforgiving sports. And I think that's why I liked it. I don't think I could do a sport like diving or figure skating where you're judged kind of subjectively, but the objectiveness of the number, you touch when you touch, and you can't argue with data. And I'm a very data-driven person and a very data-driven swimmer. But it is kind of crazy to look back on my Olympic win and my Commonwealth Games win and an NCAA win. I think combined was 0.13 seconds. But on the other hand, I've lost 2 NCAA titles by 0.19. So it just shows how it's what happens on the day. And you can't really control what you do going into it. And kind of, unfortunately, it's like, oh, whoever trained harder during the year doesn't work like that. And I think that's the beauty of sport as well.
Your career spans an era of Canadian swimming that has truly been remarkable. How do you think that you've shaped the future of Canadian swimming?
Yes, Swimming Canada is on a meteoric rise, and I'm lucky and very grateful to have been a part of a portion of that. And I think it really did start in 2016 when we won 6 medals on the women's side. And I don't think we had won a female medal at the Olympics since, I think, 1984. So it had been a very long time. But as we kind of developed and as we grew into the next Olympics, we're like, we want to improve, we want to get more medals. And we tied our medal count. But it's interesting to look at all the medals that we had won in the same events from 2016. We actually upgraded the color one. So even though we wanted to win 7 medals, we wanted to win another one. It just shows that we were able to improve our placing. So that was pretty significant. Yeah. But for me, I kind of came in later on the scene compared to some of my teammates and some of my really close friends on the national team. So it was about, I kind of got thrown in the deep end. I wanted to be the best athlete that I could be, but I had never been to a meet like that before. And winning kind of put a new different pressure on that. So I kind of sat back and watched a lot of what my competitors and what my teammates were doing, how they conducted themselves, their kind of warm-ups, ways they got ready to race. And I kind of hope I was able to be someone like that for the younger athletes later on in my career.
So we spoke a little bit about the intersection of COVID and asthma, you being out at these Olympics during COVID times, how it wasn't challenging and how, of course, it was a bit scary too, with your lungs not knowing how you would react to receiving COVID should you have gotten COVID. So I'd like to explore now the intersection of asthma and elite performance, at least individually. Now, you were diagnosed with asthma at 17, just as your career really was taking off. And what was that moment like for you, and how did you navigate the challenges of competing at an elite level with asthma?
Yeah, so it's always a kind of a running joke in my family since my mother is a physician, and how the doctor's kids are kind of just like, oh, you'll be fine. It's just a bruise. It's a minor setback. But I had been bugging my mom for a while, actually, to take me to a respirologist because I was having a little bit of a hard time breathing in practice. So it wasn't until I returned home from a competition in Singapore, which is Other than Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the most humid, hot place I've ever been in my life. And the building it's a really nice facility, but one of the walls is kind of just like grates that go out to the outside. So you never really can escape that kind of humidity. So I was doing these really easy practices kind of gearing up for the meet. And I'm like, why am I having such a hard time? So I finally came home and I was like, Mom, this is happening. Like, I need to go to the doctor. She's like, okay. So we went, and I do have sports-induced asthma. And I think when I first heard that, I was like, I had figured as much. But it was really challenging for me because I was struggling to complete my best event. So if I couldn't finish my best event, then I would never accomplish my goal and my dream of going to the Olympics. And I think that was the hardest thing for me. We went to a meet, I think. So this was in November of 2017. And then I went to a meet in January of 2018, and I was trying a variety of different medications. And I left the meet after a day, and I had added a bunch of time in all my events, and it was really, really, really discouraging. But eventually we ended up trying some different medications. It was a very odd kind of cocktail combination. All of the Swimming Canada doctors and doctors I had known were like, you really take this together? And I was like, yeah. But so it forced me to actually focus on the sprint events, which ironically is what I had all my success in later on in my career. So I guess I have my asthma to thank for that.
You said that you were on a weird concoction of medications that doctors thought maybe was a bit strange, but that for whatever reason it was working for you. And it, it really does remind you that our lungs are all different. Our lungs are different for each and every person. We each have our own triggers as well. Triggers of mine, I know, kind of revolving around swimming that I can think of would be chlorine, humidity. We discussed humidity being in Louisiana, the outdoors really coming inside, and heat as well. So how do you balance all those triggers when swimming, and especially, as we've been discussing at an elite level, that's crazy to think about ever really having control of your breathing if you're constantly in competition or constantly training.
Yeah, it was challenging to say the least, especially when I lived in Louisiana and was at school there. We were the only building, I think, in southern Louisiana without air conditioning. So I was dealing with that on a daily basis. And it does get really frustrating and really was hard to be able to put in the effort that I wanted to, even though I couldn't physically go a certain time or exert myself that way. And my coach, he has coached me for 7 years, so he knew what I needed. And luckily I could be like, I'm having a really bad asthma day. Like, I can't do this. Can I modify it or take a rest off and then go back and hit one really good rep? So it was about kind of modifying it. And just like you said, everyone has different triggers and different things they need to be able to perform at their best, whether that's day-to-day life or as an elite athlete in that capacity. But chlorine is number one for sure. A lot of swimmers have chlorine-induced asthma, and there's a lot of puffers around on the deck. So not too unusual there. But I did have to have a TUE, a therapeutic use exemption, for a period of time to kind of get my asthma under control initially. And that's another challenge that I had to deal with too, is because my medications were threshold medications. So I couldn't take over a certain amount of puffs per day, because I would likely test positive if I were to be drug tested. And so I was in what's called the registered testing pool for 5 years. And that means that it's kind of like it's a website online, and it's a calendar, and you put in 1 hour where you're going to be every single day of the year. So that's vacations, that's holidays, that's Christmas, that's training, that's even school. And they can show up to test you. So I was really, really not wanting to test positive and really focused on kind of doing the minimum puffs that I could to maximize the effect. And the most challenging part of that was actually crossing time zones, because I wanted to stay on track with how many and the medications that I was taking, but I didn't want to overdo it by accident, trying to get on that time zone. So there's a lot of challenges that I don't really think about, and I didn't really think about it until I was like, oh, this is something that I really have to think about.
A lot of people believe asthma is a limitation, yet here you are, an Olympic champion and world record holder. What do you want young athletes with asthma to know about what's possible?
I think for me, and through my partnership with the Lung Health Foundation, I've been really grateful to kind of get that message out there. And it's just you might have to take a slightly different route. And one of the big mottos in Swimming Canada was we all have our own path to get where we want to go. And I think that's the lung health journey of individuals is so unique to that individual that, like you said, what I need is going to be different from what you need versus someone else. So I think knowing your body and knowing what you can and can't do. And for me, it was what I could do on my worst days and try to be the best that I could in those moments. That really helped me to succeed when everything went the way that it was supposed to. But just knowing that you do have those limitations and that you might have to modify some things, but that if you want to work hard enough and you really want to achieve something, that it's not out of the question.
Have you ever had a competition or training session where your asthma really tested you? And how did you push through that?
Training sessions all the time. Unfortunately, luckily, only the locker room had air conditioning at the pool in Louisiana. So I would run in there for a couple of minutes, grab my puffer, bring it back on deck, just relax, kind of get back into it, do a little bit of easy, and then hit a good rep or 2 reps, and then do a little bit more easy. So it was about kind of putting in the work and being able to see that I've been progressing that day, but I wouldn't have gone as full out as I would be able to on a day where my asthma wasn't flaring up.
And what are some of the key things that you've learned about managing asthma while competing at such a high level?
I think one is just, first of all, be diligent with your medications and be diligent with knowing what your body can and can't do. And I think the second one is kind of what I just mentioned, but the best day you can be on your worst days will really help how good you can be on your best days. And even though I went through a period of time where my times were horrible, I could barely finish a race without passing out because I needed oxygen. But just knowing that if I needed to switch something up or just do a little bit different than what my teammates are doing, it's not a bad thing.
So we spoke earlier a little bit about the advocacy work that you're doing. We had met at the Better Breathing Week, as I mentioned earlier. So you're an ambassador for the Lung Health Foundation. You're working to raise awareness about lung health. And why is it important to you to step into this role?
I think it's really important for me to take on this role because of my experiences and the things that I was able to accomplish and showing other people that they can do something similar if they really decide that they want to do that or pursue something at a high level athletically. The Lung Health Foundation has been a great partner for me, and I was really excited to be able to come to Better Breathing Week. And as I go forward, as we continue this partnership, I want to continue to advocate for better lung health for not just athletes, but all Canadians. And the commercial that we shot last year, What Your Lungs Do For You, and I think that was something really, really powerful. And we definitely take advantage of what our lungs can do for us. And I think we want to promote lung health and healthy habits around that. I mean, a lot of my teammates actually will vape too. And that's something pretty common in athletics. Not so much smoking, but vaping is still pretty common, unfortunately. And I wonder how good some of my teammates could be if they had full lung capacity. So kind of just thinking about those things and promoting it more at the high school, university, kind of college level. But now that I'm retired from sport, I want to continue to show other young athletes what is possible, even with asthma, but kind of take that a step further and kind of target more outside of sport and general life and lung health.
As I mentioned earlier, we all have our different triggers. For me, I can tell you for sure that one of my biggest triggers is vaping. Not that I've really done it, but on occasion I've been working and I'll grab, my buddy's vape and I'll take a little bit. And sometimes I'll take a little bit too much. Now, this is years ago. I certainly don't do it anymore, but it would make my breathing extremely bad. I would be taking my inhaler right away. And I noticed that even at the end of the day, I still felt the effects in my lungs. So if you're an asthmatic thinking about vaping, or maybe I'm an asthmatic, but I smoke and I should probably switch to vaping, it's not really going to be much better for you. It is going to have its own new symptoms. So just beware of that. Maybe consider not starting it to begin with. As you mentioned, how great could they have been had they not vaped? That one little thing might have made a real big difference. If it does for us, I'm sure it could for them.
100%. And like we talked about before, 0.02 could be the difference, right? So it's in athletics, it's definitely about trying to maximize your health and your potential. But in everyday life, I think it's really important to think about you can't live without your lungs breathing for you. And I think that's something that we definitely take for granted.
If you could go back and give advice to the 17-year-old Maggie who had just been diagnosed, what would you say?
I think the first thing I would say is that it's not the end of the world. Just keep working hard and you can still accomplish what you want to. But I think it just takes some time to learn how to maneuver around those roadblocks. But I would just tell myself that if you still want to do it and you still work hard, you can still achieve it.
Maybe a good time to raise this, but before I got into running, I was 278 pounds. I couldn't go for a walk without taking my inhaler. I couldn't walk up the stairs without taking my inhaler. I was not fit. I obviously wasn't eating properly, and food does play a big part as well. When I started losing weight, naturally my lungs began to become more productive, more efficient. I could breathe a lot better. I could go for small walks without taking my inhaler. I could go up my stairs without being out of breath. Of course, you lose weight, that's naturally going to happen. Now, one thing I did notice as I lost weight and I got into running is that those days where I could only run 100 meters or 200 meters turned into days that I could only run 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, to the point where I ran 2.5 marathons without taking my inhaler once. So being fit does play a huge part in lung health. Staying fit also plays a big part. So I strive to emulate my passion for fitness and its benefits on my lungs to other asthmatics out there, because I know what it's like to be out of shape and have asthma. And I also know what it's like to be in better shape and have asthma. It's almost like, for me, it's almost like it's not there, and I can handle any one other trigger certainly a lot better than I can handle them all if I'm, 278 pounds, what I was before. And again, nothing wrong with that. But for lung health, I do find that staying active, at least, to a certain extent, does play a big role in how efficient your lungs are.
Definitely.
You've spoken about wanting to shift the conversation to highlight asthma more. What do you think needs to change in how we talk about asthma in sports?
I think we're improving, in every aspect of kind of lung health awareness. But I think even in school, when you're in phys ed class, kind of normalizing that, or even I had a lot of health class when I was in elementary school. So kind of just bringing more awareness to it as kids and showing them that you can still participate and be the athlete that you want to be. But I think overall, a lot of awareness is changing and people are more aware of it, which is nice.
There's often a stigma around chronic conditions like asthma in athletics. Do you ever feel like you had to prove something because of that?
Luckily, I don't feel like I did. I think for me, it was, okay, I have another challenge that some people might not have. How can I make up for it? So I think that was more my mindset, instead of kind of feeling bad for myself and just moping around like, oh, like I have a hard time breathing, like I'm never going to get as good as they are. So I think you just have to take control of it and be ready to do whatever you have to do to get where you want to go.
What does being a role model for young athletes with asthma mean to you?
I had role models growing up, and I really hope that I am just as good a role model for young kids and young athletes now as I had growing up. But I think by bringing awareness to asthma and lung health, it makes you more relatable to young athletes. I'm not just some superhero or invincible swimmer, that I have things that have kind of prevented me from, prevented my straight path, or what I thought would be, to the Olympics, and showing that I have overcome obstacles just like they have, or they will, and that they can keep pushing past it.
And you absolutely rocked it, by the way. And we had spoken about you retiring. So you are retiring, you're stepping away from the sport, and that's a huge transition. You mentioned at the beginning, when we started talking, when you joined in on the call, that you were at the pool. Now, how does that feel, being at the pool when you are no longer there to train competitively?
It's nice. And I think I always told myself I'd wait 5 years after I retired before I got back in a pool. And I think I made it 2 months. But for me, I think it's the best way for me to maintain fitness and keep my heart in good health. But for me, I thought it would be a lot more challenging, I think, to forget about the times I used to go, or the way that I used to be able to swim, and knowing that that was my peak and I'm never going to be that fast ever again. But it's been really peaceful and really nice to kind of just go and swim and move my body for the fitness, and because I want to, not because I'm training for an Olympics. I actually have a swimming buddy now. My mom's colleague's husband has been swimming for several years, and I asked her if I could join because I find it hard to want to exercise and to kind of create a schedule for myself right now because I'm in between. I obviously graduated from my master's last May and I'm applying to law school right now. So I don't really have like a weekly schedule. And I think that's been hard to kind of fit swimming in or being active. So I asked him if I could join, and I've done a couple sessions with him, and it's great. It's super fun, and I'm enjoying getting back in the pool.
Now, be honest, do you ever set up a timer and test yourself?
I did once or twice in November when I first got back in the pool, but now I'm like, I'm just swimming for the fitness and for the enjoyment of it.
So you've just mentioned your interest in law school. What's drawing you to that path? And do you see yourself staying connected to sports in some way?
Well, funny enough, that's how I want to do it. I actually want to go into sport law and work in some of the big sporting organizations to kind of help combat corruption, doping, like kind of the big picture, sexual assault, those kind of big picture items in sport. And I always knew I would never want to coach. I don't have the patience for it. And I think I would benefit other organizations a little bit more this way, but not to say that I don't love I'm doing a lot of clinics around the country and around the province right now. And the young kids and the energy and excitement they bring to the sport has really changed my perspective on it. And I've really, really enjoyed that. But I think sports law is definitely the path that I'm looking towards right now.
Now that you have a little bit more freedom from the rigorous training schedule, what's something new or exciting you're looking forward to trying?
I went skiing last week, the night before my birthday, for the first time in 16 years. And I have not had that much fun in a very long time.
I saw the pics.
Some of my high school friends. And I did not remember how to stop. We were going down the bunny hill. So I just decided I'm just going to lie on my back. So then I fell over. But after that, within an hour or so, I was whizzing down a black diamond. So it was nice to be able to do these things that I was like, if I want to go to the Olympics, I don't want to injure myself. I can't go skating. I can't go skiing. I can't go bike riding, anything like that. So that was the most fun thing I've done, I think, since I've retired.
Going down a black diamond sounds like you're a natural athlete, probably across the board.
I think I like not frozen water better, but definitely something I want to work on.
If we fast forwarded 10 years, where do you see Maggie McNeil?
Gosh, maybe 5 years, but I mean, 10 years, I hope I'm making a difference in the sport law space. And I don't know, just enjoying life, still hanging out with my friends and family and kind of keeping those relationships. Those are really important to me. But yeah, I'd say those are the main things. Maybe have a family and some kids by then, but that one, we'll see. That one will happen when it happens.
And you mentioned making a difference, and you are making a difference. I met you when you were making a difference, and being on here speaking to the listeners, you're absolutely making a difference. So even if that was the bare minimum of what you did, I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you.
So if there's one message that you could leave for our listeners, especially young athletes facing challenges, what would it be?
I think for me, the main couple things I've tried to live by as an athlete is one, everyone has a different path. A lot of the swimmers I raced when I was younger that were faster than me, it just took me a little longer to catch up to them. So everyone is growing and maturing at different speeds. So don't let that discourage you. And then the other thing I would say is the big thing for me is to focus on the process. So by solely focusing on the outcome, you can't really control that. You can't control what other people are doing. You can't control little things that might not go your way. So by focusing on the process, so for example, in my 100 butterfly, focusing on my underwaters, when I'm breathing, certain things like that I can control, that's going to lead to the best outcome possible.
Where can people follow your journey and support the causes that you're passionate about?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on all social media platforms. My favorite is definitely Instagram, probably. So you can follow me at McNmag, MacNmagg. And yeah, I'm excited to be able to, now that I'm retired, do some more outreach work and definitely some more work with the Lung Health Foundation to get their message out there.
We'll definitely have you back on as well going forward. And I'll be sure to leave that link to your Instagram account in the descriptors, as well as the link to the Lung Health Foundation, of course. And I do also want to share that commercial because I remember watching that commercial and it was terrific. And I think it could really move some people. So I'm going to include that link as well. So if you're listening to the podcast, just find it on Spotify, find it on YouTube, whatever. You're going to see that link right at the bottom. Click on it. You're going to want to see the video, I promise you. So Maggie, before we wrap up, I ask every guest the same question. Whether you have asthma or not, every breath we take is a gift. A reminder of our resilience, our drive to keep going, and our power to define our own limits. With a single breath, you have the potential to move mountains and change the world. So with that in mind, again, I have one final question for you. If you had only one last breath, but with it the power to influence the world, what would your message be?
That's a really deep question. I think my one message would be to take care of your bodies and to take care of your lungs. You really, unless you're lucky, you really only get one set of them. And I think we all really take for granted what our lungs do for our lives. And if you want to live your life to the fullest, that also requires you to take care of your body.
That's terrific. I couldn't agree with you more. Maggie, this has been an incredible conversation. Your story is proof that resilience, a mindset, and passion can take you anywhere regardless of the obstacles in your way. Thank you again for sharing your story and for inspiring so many both in and out of the pool. For everybody listening, if you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a review. And if you want to keep up with Maggie and support her advocacy work, we'll have it all in the links in the show notes. Until next time, keep pushing forward, keep breathing deep, and never let anything hold you back.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Wheeze. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Wheeze and or follow me at the Asthma Runner for more updates. Keep breathing strong and remember, your potential has no limits. Until next time.